What is up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and last week we got another really interesting indie video game that dropped, and I was super excited for this game. Ever since I found out it was a thing, I really wanted to play it, and the game that I'm referring to is called The Midnight Walk. Of course, since I'm making this video, I've played it and I want to talk about it, so without further ado, let's rock. The Midnight Walk was developed by a brand new studio called MoonHood, and it's actually the studio's first game. The Midnight Walk was released on May 8th on PS5 and PC with VR support. I personally played it on my PC via Steam, and the last time I checked, it wasn't technically verified on the Steam Deck, but I did play it for a minute on my Steam Deck, and it did run just fine. Midnight Walk is set in the handcrafted world of the work table. Internal darkness has unleashed monstrous creatures and driven its inhabitants to madness in their desperate search for fire and light. Players control the Burned One as he embarks on a perilous journey known as the Midnight Walk to Moon Mountain to restore light. The Burned One is joined by a small companion, Potboy, who takes the walk as well, all while evading nightmarish beast and the dark itself, which hungers for Potboy's flame. And I believe I've talked about this game before. It was shown off during Sony's latest State of Play, and while I was lukewarm on that showcase as a whole, I thought the Midnight Walk looked dope. I'm a big fan of both horror video games and claymation stop motion animation, and as good as 2025 has been for video games so far, I haven't really played a good horror game yet, so I was hoping that the Midnight Walk would scratch that itch for me. But a quick disclaimer before we get into the details of the game, I did want to address something up front since I know a lot of gamers have strong opinions about the game's length. The Midnight Walk is very short. I went in expecting that, especially because using stop motion, that type of animation does take a while to produce. So even with those expectations, I was still pretty surprised by how short of a game it was. According to Steam, it only took me 5.2 hours to finish the game, and I'm not a completionist by any means, but I did take some time to explore. Not that there was a ton of exploring to do in this game, but I did kind of look around and kind of try to soak in the environment as much as I can. I did experience both endings. This game does have two endings, which I'll get to here in a little bit. So yeah, 5.2 hours total, and that's a pretty big chunk of this game, and at a $38 price point. Now, there was a deal on Steam, which if you're watching this video as soon as I post it, you still have a couple of days to take advantage of that deal, but I got this game for $35, so a few dollars off. So it's not a big deal if you missed the sale, but at a $38 price point and only 5 hours to play this. Again, I didn't get all of the collectibles, but I did explore as much as I wanted to, and that's really short for a video game. So it's not a great deal if you're looking for an hours per dollar type of value. That being said, I'm not necessarily knocking it for being short. The quality is high, and the game clearly took a lot of care to craft, so I do want to give them credit where credit is due. But if you're someone who values length and replayability above all else, it's something to be aware of going in. But that's not necessarily a downside for me. I'm all about quality over quantity, especially with video games. So many titles these days do feel bloated for me, and they have a lot of things kind of shoehorned into them just for the sake of padding playtime. But this game was exactly as long as it needed to be, minus one small complaint that I'll get to here in a little bit. It was exactly what it needed to be. And I think I said this recently with Expedition 33, but I'm always going to support developers, especially a smaller studio, who have a clear vision and make the exact game that they want to make. They did that with Expedition 33, and I do think that they did that as well with the Midnight Walk. While it does wear some of its influences on its sleeve, most notably The Nightmare Before Christmas and Tim Burton, it still manages to feel like a totally unique experience. The claymation visuals are super well done, and the atmosphere, sound design, and the music really take it to the next level. Enough with the broad strokes. Let's actually get into what makes The Midnight Walk as great of an experience as I thought it was. Let's start with the story, which was easily one of my favorite parts of The Midnight Walk. On the surface, it just kind of follows the journey of the Burned One and Potboy as they trek to Moon Mountain. So you're just literally following them going from point A to point B. And that's the overarching story. However, the game does play out more like a season of an anthology TV series. Think Twilight Zone or Black Mirror. Each of the 6 chapters has its own sort of self-contained story that ties into the larger theme of bringing fire to darkness. And those chapters are really, really interesting. While the final 2 chapters are much shorter than the previous 4, and by shorter, I mean they probably took me maybe an hour to complete combined, that self-contained story structure made each chapter feel distinct and meaningful. What really stood out to me was how much personality the world had. Even in its quiet moments between chapters, you can interact with recurring characters like a 2-headed soothsayer or a banjo player chilling by a campfire. And these conversations add a nice layer of lore and mythology and charm to the bleak setting. And honestly, I'm kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier with the game's length. My only complaint about the game's short length is the fact that I enjoyed these little stories and characters so much that I kind of just wanted more of them. Like I said earlier, the last 2 chapters felt pretty short. It did kind of feel like they rushed them a little bit. And I feel like this game could have used like maybe 1 or 2 more chapters just because I did enjoy these stories so much. And also, like I mentioned earlier, the game offers 2 different endings. The first ending, I kind of tried to pick the one that I thought the game wanted you to, like the intended ending of the game first. I did that one first, watched the credits, then went back to the second one. So the game makes it really easy to experience both of the endings, which I appreciated. So essentially, and I don't know if you have to watch the credits, but I always just watch the credits out of respect for the developers. But I watched the credits, and then it allows you to, it takes you back to the menu, and then it allows you to resume basically the last checkpoint right before you made that choice for the ending. And so it does make it pretty easy to experience both endings. However, that being said, I'm not sure it was worth it, because basically the other ending, like the overall cutscenes that you see at the very end, doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. It doesn't really make for great replayability. And at its core, the Midnight Walk is a simple journey. You, as the Burned One, and your little companion Potboy travel from point A to point B, bringing fire to scattered towns along the way to push back the darkness and the monsters that thrive in it. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and it really gave me Frodo and Sam vibes, especially with the bleak tone and the slow, deliberate pacing. And while you do eventually get a matchstick gun, this is not an action game at all. It's firmly a stealth horror survival experience. Most of the time you're avoiding monsters, not really fighting them, using fire to distract them, or hiding in closets and holes in the ground. That sense of helplessness really worked for me. I liked the fact that I wasn't like this superhero that had all these magical powers. I was just some guy with a little gun that didn't really do a whole lot. Honestly, it's more of a puzzle solving tool for lighting candles at a distance than it was an actual weapon. Puzzle wise, it's pretty light as well. Nothing that will challenge puzzle platforming veterans. Most of the time, it's just about lighting the right candles to progress. There was one standout section where you could literally freeze and unfreeze monsters to kind of solve these puzzles, where you would have to get them to actually stay on a platform. So you kind of have to time it where you'd freeze them on a particular platform to solve a puzzle. And I was actually really excited because up until that point in the game, you hadn't really done anything like that so far. It was literally just lighting candles. Unfortunately, that was the only section that you used that mechanic. So I was pretty disappointed with that. Honestly, the puzzles themselves are very, very easy. The only puzzle that actually gave me trouble at all during this game was there was a clock puzzle where you had to match up the time on the clock to another clock in the room, and there was multiple hands, and I actually thought that they were trying to be more clever than the puzzle was actually being, because there was multiple different hands on the clock. And so I thought that you had to match up all of the hands, and it turns out it was just a little hand and the big hand that you had to match up. So literally I was struggling with that puzzle because I was making it harder than it needed to be. So the puzzles were very, very easy. Stealth is actually the only real challenge in this game, and I kind of use challenge in quotes because this game itself is not very hard. Like I was kind of saying earlier, if a monster sees you, you're toast. There's really no way to fight back. You can run away from them. A lot of times they're faster than you, so a lot of times, unless you're really close to a closet or a hole in the ground, you really can't get away from them, and you're probably gonna die. Luckily, the game does respawn you pretty quickly, so you don't really have to worry too much if you do die. And honestly, you have a lot of tools to either distract the monsters or to sneak around. There is a crouch button, so it makes it pretty easy to sneak around or just hide in the closet or whatever. So you do have a lot of options as far as getting away from the monsters and kind of avoiding them. So again, the stealth isn't too challenging either. I do want to give them credit because there is some pretty cool mechanics, like having to close your eyes to access hidden areas. It's a very terrifying concept in a horror game when you have monsters chasing you, to have to close your eyes and not be able to see anything. There's also moments where you have to literally look at a monster and they're charging after you, and then you have to close your eyes. Those sections were really terrifying. Unfortunately, they were few and far between. There is some light collectible hunting. Again, as I said earlier, I'm not a completionist by any means, so I kind of explored what I wanted to explore and I collected what I wanted to collect. I'd imagine it probably wouldn't take you very long to get 100% in this game, just because the chapters themselves are very short. Overall, the game is very linear. There are a few slightly more open areas, but they always kind of funnel you back into the main path pretty quickly, which was a bit of a letdown, especially considering how beautiful and detailed the environments are. I really wanted to look around and explore much more than the game allows you to. And that's honestly what really sets the Midnight Walk apart, is its creative design, especially with the creatures and the overall atmosphere. It's on a completely different level than a lot of games that I've played recently. I've already mentioned how much I love the claymation style, but it seriously cannot be overstated how cool it is in this game. It's not just a visual gimmick, it adds real personality to the world and perfectly complements the stealth survival horror gameplay. Each creature was sculpted in clay before being rendered in game, and it really shows. The meticulous detail in the creature design really pops off the screen. The darkness in the game isn't just a backdrop, it's part of the tension, and with only your matches, Potboy's glow, or the occasional creepy glowing eyes providing light, it keeps you constantly on edge. Some of the monsters, like the Russian doll style ones with heads that would pop out of their bodies, legit freaked me out. Even Potboy, who definitely looks creepy himself at first, ends up being this weirdly lovable little guy. Same goes for Housey, your mobile house and kind of your base of operations. It's literally a walking house that kind of follows you around, and every so often you kind of have to clear the path on the Midnight Walk for Housey to get around. There's even a moment in there where he essentially gets kidnapped and you have to go through this whole chapter just to rescue him, and that's a really cool moment. So the game has moments with Potboy and Housey where you kind of connect with these characters, even though you literally don't say a word to either one of these characters, but you also bond with them in these weird ways. You can literally hang out inside Housie and check out all of those collectibles. So like I said earlier, Housie kind of pulls double duty. He's not only a character in the game, but he's also your kind of base of operations as well. Plus, when you're walking around between chapters, you'll just see other creatures kind of just wandering around, kind of going about their day, and it just makes the world feel much more lived in. The chapters themselves all feel visually distinct. Therefore, the game never got stale. It never felt like I was kind of doing the same thing over and over again, even though that's kind of what I was doing as far as the gameplay is concerned. The visuals made it feel fresh. And for me, I've said this before, sound design is a huge part of what makes horror, not just video games, but movies and TV work in general. And the Midnight Walk absolutely nails the sound design. From the subtle environmental sounds to the eerie, haunting soundtrack, the audio really amplifies the tension and atmosphere. Every artistic choice this game makes, from visuals to sound, is pitch perfect for me. It's a game that doesn't just look and sound good, it uses those elements to fully immerse you in its creepy, heartfelt world. Wrapping up this video, the Midnight Walk might be short, but it delivers a deeply memorable and atmospheric experience that really stuck with me. Its claymation visuals, eerie creature design, and haunting soundscape all come together to create a unique stealth horror adventure that stands out from the pack. The emotional story, charming characters, and small but meaningful moments between chapters give the game real heart. While some of the later sections felt rushed, and the two endings were a bit too similar for my taste, the overall journey felt thoughtfully crafted and full of personality. If you, like me, are more into quantity than sheer length, and especially if you're a fan of horror or stop motion, this one's absolutely worth the walk. I'm gonna go ahead and give it 4 out of 5 stars. But as always, those are just my thoughts on the Midnight Walk. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Of course, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash that like button, as the kids say. It's just a quick and easy way to tell YouTube that you enjoyed this video, and they should push it to other people that would enjoy it as well. It really helps me out. So definitely, if you enjoyed it, hit that like button. Also, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead, consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, go ahead and ding that bell. That way you're notified every time I post another video. I try to post weekly gaming related content, which is obviously stuff that you like because you've made it this far in the video. So definitely consider subscribing and dinging that bell. But until next video, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy. And we were just talking, and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?